This week we're looking at Napoleon. Now we left off with the end of the French Revolution, and Napoleon was part of the military. He was in command of the military. Napoleon ends up sort of taking control, and he actually becomes a dictator. So immediately after France gets rid of their absolute monarch, we have sort of a new type of monarch in place, which we call a dictator. Napoleon forges a new empire. This is chapter 23, section 3. Our objectives this week is number 1, explain how Napoleon Bonaparte came to power. 2, summarize how Napoleon restored order in France. And 3, describe the extent and weaknesses of the Napoleon Empire. Napoleon was a very short man, and he is known throughout history as being a short man. Now, in his early life, Napoleon was actually born on a small island in the Mediterranean called Corsica. It is there that he attends military school and eventually joins the army. When the revolution broke out in France, he's the one who sort of runs to France, joins the army, and sort of joins what is going on in France. A hero of the hour. Now remember, at this time, at the end of the French Revolution, we have the radicals are ousted from the government, they're sort of kicked out, and we have the Directory, or the conservative government, put back in place. The Directory gives Napoleon a chance to sort of show how he is a powerful leader. So in 1795, we have Napoleon is defeating royalist rebels who are attacking the National Convention. So what ends up happening is we have some people rebelling against the Directory, that conservative government, and someone tells Napoleon that he has to protect all the delegates or the representatives in the government. Now Napoleon easily defends against them, and he is sort of raised up as being a hero of the hour. So everyone in France takes notice to what Napoleon did. After that, he gains more victories in Italy. He actually is crossing the Alps to meet the Austrian and the Kingdom of Sardinia's troops, and he wins. He wins against Austria. After this sort of major battle, Napoleon's popularity gains in France. People have now taken notice at what a strong military leader he is. He continues on to Egypt. He actually goes all the way to Egypt, which is quite far from France, to try and protect French trade against the British. So here he is fighting against the British. But he does not win this battle in Egypt. There's another sort of stronger military guy from England who is able to stop Napoleon. But Napoleon was very smart in not getting this in the news in France. So even though he lost in Egypt, no one in France really knows, and so his popularity still grows. Here is a picture of Napoleon crossing the Alps. Now I want you to take a look at this picture, and I want you to observe, what does Napoleon look like in this picture? Is he looking powerful? Is he looking weak? Discuss where he is positioned, discuss his hand, discuss what is he riding. Tell me about this picture. Here we have another picture of Napoleon sort of facing Egypt. Now I want you to compare that last picture with this picture. How is this picture different? And knowing what we know about what happened in the Alps and what happened in Egypt, why do you think these pictures are different? While Napoleon is making his slow journey back from Egypt, we start to realize that France is in chaos again. So the Directory, that conservative government that took over, they are no longer trusted by the French people. So when Napoleon returns to France, we have one of his friends suggesting to Napoleon that he should actually take over the government. This is known as a coup, or coup d'état in French. And in 1799, Napoleon takes over the French government and sort of disbands the Directory, this conservative government. Napoleon then creates a council, 3 councils. And he ends up naming himself as the first consul and takes over complete power, which is another term, dictator. Now, a dictator is much like an absolute monarch, except Napoleon is not a king, okay? So just imagine they've just gotten rid of their absolute king and now they have a dictator. Now, the rest of Europe, again, is not liking that Napoleon has taken control of France. So we have the British, Russians, and Austrians. Again, they're joining the fight to fight against Napoleon and France. Ultimately, we have some peace agreements. So instead of fighting for a long term, we have some diplomacies, meaning all nations agree to sign sort of a treaty. And for the first time in 10 years, we actually have some peace in France and the rest of Europe. Napoleon, of course, doesn't really let the French people know that he's a dictator. And so he's sort of appearing to the people as sort of their constitutional leader or their chosen leader. In 1800, we have the first plebiscite, which is the vote of the people. And this vote of the people actually turned out that the French people wanted Napoleon as their leader. And actually it also said that it gave Napoleon almost absolute power in the government as well as the first consul. Napoleon had sort of a rough job. If we remember, France had huge debt problems. For the most part, Napoleon does not go back to the ways of Louis XVI. He actually is trying to help France and does keep a lot of what the revolution wanted, while still sort of holding most of the power in government. So the first thing he needed to fix was the economy, that is basically the debt. So what he does is he sets up a national banking system and he organizes a tax collection that is going to be more efficient. So it's going to be easier for the government to collect taxes, and he's making sure that these taxes are fair, that everyone is being taxed what they should be taxed, not just the third estate. The second thing he ends up doing is he establishes lycées. Now, lycées are government-run public schools. And the purpose of a lycée is, first of all, it's only for men. We don't have women going to these schools. But it is also training officials. So he is having people from any estate or any walk of life. They have the ability to go to school and better themselves and be a part of the government. This was something the French people really liked. That means that you could get a position in government not based on how much money you had or how much land you had or how rich you were, but based on how good you were at doing the job. Another thing that Napoleon did was he signed something that we call is the Concordat. The Concordat is an agreement with the Pope. This is the Catholic Church, and it's restoring Catholicism in France. Now, if we remember during the Revolution, the National Assembly, they took away any power that the Catholic Church had in France. Napoleon is bringing that back. The fourth thing he does is he creates a number of laws, which he calls the Napoleonic Code. Now, these laws generally were not very enlightened. While it did promote some freedoms, overall it limited people's liberty and freedom, and it also made people sort of conform to one way. An example of this would be the freedom of speech. So you did not have as much freedom to speak publicly as you did during the Revolution. Now, Napoleon also, he ends up crowning himself as the emperor. So 5 years after Napoleon has taken his role as dictator of France, he is actually placing the emperor's crown on himself. Now, this is supported by the French people. They like it that he has sort of gained this status. This is a picture of it. Again, this is sort of a funny picture. First of all, here is the Pope. Now, normally, the Pope would be putting the crown on the king's head. But if you are looking hard at this picture, we see that Napoleon is holding the crown himself and putting the crown on his own head. This sort of is an indication that Napoleon thinks very highly of himself. As you can see, we have people bowing and sort of watching him do this. Being crowned emperor does not really satisfy Napoleon. Napoleon has sort of a hunger to expand French land. He first tries to do that in America, but it is a little bit unsuccessful. So at this point, France actually has some colonies in the New World, in America. In 1801, Napoleon attempts to retake a colony of Saint Domingo, but he fails. Basically, he sends troops there to take back this island, but the troops end up dying. They are not used to the type of weather and tropical climate. The rebels who are on the island, they actually know how to fight and how to deal with the island's landscape. Napoleon responds to this as sort of giving up in America. He decides America's too far, America is not worth it, and so he gives up his claims in America and concentrates on Europe instead. Part of that is he is selling a large part of the North America, called the Louisiana Territory, to the U.S. So for $15 million, the U.S. buys a big chunk of land that was France's. He sort of likes that he's selling it to the U.S. because he is not selling it to Britain. So Britain has sort of lost out on a huge piece of land in the territory. And since America and US don't really like each other, they had a war, this sort of satisfies Napoleon. Here's an example of the Louisiana Purchase. So if you can imagine, all this land was the French's, but Napoleon sells it to Jefferson and it becomes a part of America. After giving up in America, Napoleon starts to look to Europe and wants to conquer areas of Europe. Now, he's already been somewhat successful conquering Austria's Netherlands, as well as parts of Italy and Switzerland. Now he's looking to other areas. One of them being Rhineland, the Austrian Empire, Prussia, and Great Britain. What ends up happening, the rest of Britain bands together again. Britain, Russia, Austria, and Sweden all join forces to try and stop Napoleon. They don't stop him. For the most part, Napoleon is able to defeat them and forces them to sign peace treaties. He isn't able to defeat Great Britain because Great Britain has a great navy. In fact, while Napoleon is basically conquered most of Europe, the only one he's unable to conquer is Great Britain. And we see this at the Battle of Trafalgar. So in 1805, we have the British are winning this Battle of Trafalgar, which is a battle on the sea. Napoleon tries to split up the French navy to attack the British, but the British are too powerful. This defeat forces Napoleon to give up his plan of invading Great Britain. Great Britain's navy is too strong and Napoleon cannot defeat it. He's basically trying to find another way to control Britain at this time. Even though he hasn't defeated Great Britain, he has now created the largest empire since the Roman Empire. This hasn't been seen for centuries. So Napoleon now controls Europe except for Britain, Portugal, Sweden, and Ottomans, which is the Turkish area. He also has, in areas that he doesn't control, he has puppet rulers. What that means is that the rulers are sort of loyal to Napoleon, and they don't cause a threat. He also has alliances with other countries who will support Napoleon as well. The French Empire, they end up by 1807 to 1812, it reaches even larger. Okay? So even though the Great Britain is not a part of Napoleon's kingdom yet, he's sort of looking to of ways to make it a part of his kingdom. This is going to lead to his end.